it's Mo. It is time for another Basement Box Books unboxing and haul and unhaul. That is a series that I'm doing this year on my channel where I go through all the boxes of books that I have in my basement with the idea that I want to unhaul as many of them as I can. But since I haven't opened some of these boxes in literal years, I wanted to go through them with you as sort of a haul, see what books are down there, see what books we want to keep but put back in the basement, or keep but put on my TBR that I'm going to read in the near future, and then ideally get rid of, unhaul quite a few of these books. Today I have 3 boxes, 2 regular size and 1 small, and we'll start with the small one. This one is pretty clearly a box that just got stuck down there with various books, and I know that they're mostly recent acquisitions from my dad, who's also been going through his books and been giving us stuff over the last couple of years. The first book that we have to talk about is Millennium by John Varley. This is a great vintage cover. Vintage sci-fi is tough because we would keep every single vintage sci-fi, but there's too many to actually get through. So I do need to see what each of the vintage sci-fi is about and decide whether I want to keep them, whether I think I'm actually going to read them at some point, or that they're so beautiful that we need to keep, or if we can just unhaul them. This one seems interesting, has a female protagonist. I'm going to put this in a maybe pile. Next we have 3 novels by Graham Greene. This Gun for Hire, The Confidential Agent, and The Ministry of Fear. I love Graham Greene, and I do plan on keeping all the Graham Greene books. I think in my last unboxing I also had a Graham Greene book with 3 of his novels, including The Third Man, which is one that's actually on my want to read list. I probably will keep all of these. I've read a few Graham Greene and I love his work, but I will put this back in the basement because I have a lot of Graham Greene on my TBR already. But at least now I know they're down there and I don't need to pick up any more. The next book is The Unauthorized A to Z, Your Complete Warp Speed Guide to Every Voyage, covering all 3 series and 6 movies. So this is all about Star Trek. I feel like this is a book that we definitely do not need, but I probably will keep to look at. It's just interesting. So we'll call this a keep but back in the basement. Next we have Rogue Moon by Algis Burgess. This one just has a great cover, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep that one without looking at it. Far Out by Damon Knight. Damon Knight is a classic sci-fi author that I've never read, but I've heard really good things about, and I do have some others on my TBR. So we'll keep this one, put it back in the basement. Philip K. Dick, I think we always have to keep. This is Radio Free Albemuth, and this is a newly discovered novel by Philip K. Dick. According to the cover, I feel like we just need to keep his work. The same goes for Robert A. Heinlein. I really love the Robert A. Heinlein books that I've read so far, and this is The Cat Who Walked Through Walls. This cover also, I remember my dad having on his bookshelves when I was young, and I just really love this cover, and there's a cat, so This one, maybe I'll keep out. How many pages is this? Because there is the Cat Lady Readathon coming up as I'm filming this, 378. This is like a maybe going on the TBR. We have an art book, Van Gogh. This is art and biography, it looks like. We'll keep this, but we'll put it on the reference shelf. The classic Jose Philip Farmer, 1952 to 1964. So this is a lot of his short stories, I think, and serialized work. I love Philip Jose Farmer, so we'll definitely be keeping any Philip Jose Farmer that we find. Here's A Planet Called Treason by Orson Scott Card. I'm not a big Orson Scott Card fan. I have read Ender's Game and I really enjoyed that, but my husband is, so we'll definitely keep this. I think this one we can actually keep out and put on our red shelf because we have an Orson Scott Card collection there. And the last book in this box is Hyperbole and a Half, Unfortunate Situations, Flawed Coping Mechanisms, Mayhem, and Other Things That Happened by Ali Brosh. This is a comic, and it's kind of a comic strip. I've been keeping all the comics, unless they're ones that I really, really don't think I'll ever get to, because we do have just a huge comics collection, and it doesn't hurt to have them, I think. So I'm going to keep that one. So out of the first box, we have 1 maybe, but I'm going to go ahead and move it back to the basement box books. We have 1 comic, which is going on the comic shelf, and 1 art/reference book, which is going on the art/reference Commons shelf. We have one book that's going on the TBR and one book that is going on our red shelf. So no unhauls for that particular box, which is not great. The next box we have is like falling apart, so I'm going to move it closer. It's like really gross on the bottom. It's falling apart, but that's a good reason to go through it. All right, so we have Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End, a classic sci-fi, great classic cover. We'll definitely be keeping that and putting it probably down in the basement. I have never read any Arthur C. Clarke, but I do really want to read his work. Next we have Ian Fleming's Dr. No. This is just such a great sprayed edge cover. I think we'll keep that but put it back in the basement. Next we have Footfall by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. This is a, I don't know, sci-fi elephant story. It's huge. Again, I've read one Larry Niven, Ringworld, which I absolutely love. It's one of my all-time favorite sci-fi books, classic sci-fi books, but my husband really likes Larry Niven, so I think we can keep this one out and put it on our red shelf in the collection of Larry Niven books. Sherlock Holmes, The Painful Predicament of Alice Faulkner is a Sherlock Holmes graphic novel. So in these basement box book unboxings, you'll have seen that I have a ton of Sherlock Holmes books. Our dear friend Alex gave me a ton of Sherlock Holmes because we really both love Sherlock Holmes, but I'm not keeping the majority of them because they've been in the basement for over 10 years and I haven't touched any of them. But since this is a comic, I am going to put this in our comics. Here we have Woody Guthrie, A Life by Joe Klein. I do love Woody Guthrie and my husband loves Woody Guthrie. I feel like this is one that I would actually read, so I think this can go back in the basement for now. The next book is A History of the World in 6 Glasses by Tom Standage. Maybe my dad gave me this one as well, but I think this is A History of the World in different alcohols. So beer, wine, spirit, coffee, tea, and Coca-Cola. So not necessarily alcohols, but things that are addictive. This one does seem really interesting, but it also seems like one that I would read on audio. So should I even bother keeping this? We're going to put this in a maybe pile. More Homes for the Holidays, all new stories by Anne Perry, Peter Lovesey, and other masters of mystery. Let's see if there's anyone in this book that any authors that I know, so that I can see if there's anything that I would want to read. The only one that I'm interested in this one is the Tanith Lee. I haven't read any Tanith Lee, but she is a sci-fi author. So I'm going to put this one on the TBR and maybe I'll just read that story. It's Thomas More Utopia. This one can go out and go on the red shelf. I don't think this one's mine. I think it's probably my husband's from school. I feel okay keeping quite a bit of like philosophy books. Here's Charles Baudelaire, selected poems from Flowers of Evil. This one is also probably my husband's book, not mine, but I feel comfortable keeping like classics like this as well. And this one I think I would put on the TBR. This is also my husband's book, not mine, The Confessions of Aleister Crowley. So he is a big Aleister Crowley fan. I have never read any Aleister Crowley. We'll definitely keep this one, but we'll probably put it back in the basement, but maybe we'll put it on, maybe we'll put it on the red shelf. Here's stories by Ray Bradbury, I Sing the Body Electric. Definitely keeping this one. I think we can go ahead and take this one out. No, let's put it in the basement. We'll keep that one in the basement. Interesting. There's a lot of like Sherlock Holmes and vintage sci-fi crossover because this is the new Sherlock Holmes Adventures and this is more cases by Michael Moorcock and other authors. Again, this is kind of the thing that maybe I would want to read, like the Michael Moorcock one, because he is such a well-known classic sci-fi author. Not one that I've ever actually read from before. That's really the only one I'm interested in. I'm going to put that one on the TBR pile for now, just because maybe I'll just read that one story. Here is a very cool old proof of Journey to Forbidden China by Stephen F. Mosher. This one might even be on my want to read list. I'm going to put this one on the TBR so that I can look at it and see what's going on there. This box at the bottom is pretty moldy, so these books are all going to need to get cleaned up quite a bit. This is On Bullshit by Harry F. Frankfurt. I have no idea what this is. I'm guessing that this is my husband's, but not mine. Seems to be like a philosophy book of some kind. I think this one can go in the maybe pile. I've never heard of that person. Here are 3 Walter Mosley books. I have read one Walter Mosley book. I read The Devil in the Blue Dress, which I did really enjoy. I actually unhauled that one at the beginning of the year because it was a movie poster cover. But this is the first Lennon McGill mystery, and then there's our 2 other Lennon McGill mysteries. So I think what we'll do is we'll take the first one and put it on the TBR. I would definitely read more Walter Mosley, and we'll keep these other 2 down in the basement. We have When They Come From Space by Mark Clifton. This one is a vintage sci-fi. This is like a pressed into service kind of one. I think that can go in the maybe / get rid of pile. Here we have a Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine. I think this can definitely go in the unhaul pile, official unhaul pile. Raymond Chandler I really love. This is Trouble Is My Business. I've only read a few Raymond Chandler, but I really enjoyed them. We're definitely keeping this. Oh, so these are 4 Philip Marlowe stories. I'm going to keep this, but I'm going to put it back in the basement. Dashiell Hammett, I've only read, I don't know if I've read any Dashiell Hammett, but I do love actual noir. So we will be keeping this one. And I think we'll put it back in the basement for now, though, because I do have a couple of Dashiell Hammetts on my TBR already that I haven't read. This is The Schreiber Theory, a radical rewrite of American film history by David Kippen. This was probably my husband's. We'll put that on the maybe pile. I'm not super interested in that one. And then another book that was definitely my husband's is How to Examine the Nervous System, Techniques and Methods. This is another one that like I'm not interested in, but maybe he is. So this one has an interesting story. This is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. This is my best friend's favorite book. She gave me this copy of this book, but this is not necessarily a book that I am super interested in. I mean, I am interested in it. I am interested in Isabel Allende to a certain extent, but this is like a huge, epic, magical realism family saga, and that's just not really the kind of book that I look for, so I think I have to keep it, but I can put it back in the basement. These are unfortunately getting moldier and moldier. Another favorite book of a friend of mine's, The Once and Future King, is one of my mother's favorite books. I definitely do want to keep this one as well, but it will go in the basement because it's not something that I'm going to get to anytime soon. Next we have A Boy and His Physique. This is like mostly pictures and stuff. I think this can go in reference. And then we have The Big Tree of Mexico by John Skeepling. This is, I don't know, maybe a nonfiction. I'm not sure. I'm not really interested, so that can go in the maybe in case it's my husband's and we can get rid of it if not. Okay, so from that batch, we have 6 maybes, 1 definite unhaul, 1 comic plus 1 reference, 10 books that are going back in the basement, 4 books that are going on the TBR, 3 books that are going on the red shelf. Last box for today, we have The Code of the Life Maker, James P. Hogan. I'm going to say this is a no. We have a bunch of copies of literary magazines that my husband made when he was in college. We've seen quite a few of these. We're keeping them all because, you know, we're not keeping them upstairs. He doesn't want them upstairs. This is Raymond Carver Cathedrals. We're going to keep this. Laurie R. King, The Moor. I do have a collection of Laurie R. King books. I don't think I've ever read this one. This one can go back in the basement. Great vintage sci-fi cover, Who Goes Here by Bob Shaw. Definitely keeping this one in the basement. An Isaac Asimov book. This is The Positronic Man. We'll keep this one, put it in the basement. The Complete Fairy Tales of Oscar Wilde. This one I think can go on the TBR. Here is The Sound and the Fury and As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I've never read any William Faulkner. I don't plan to anytime soon, but I think this is a great vintage cover and one worth keeping in the basement. Developing Story Ideas. This is an interesting nonfiction work, but I don't think I need this one. I think we'll keep it and see if my husband wants it. We'll put it in the maybe pile. Grumpy Cat, a grumpy book. It was definitely a gift from someone for me, I'm sure, but it is not one that I necessarily need to keep. R.I.P. tartar sauce. She is a cutie, but we won't be unhauling that. 12 Poets we can definitely keep. We'll put this one on the TBR. A bear called Paddington we'll definitely keep. I don't think I've ever actually read this, but we'll put it back in the basement. We have a manga, an actual Japanese manga. I collected Japanese books for a long time because I was studying Japanese. I think I have a whole box of Japanese books that we'll get to at some point, so we'll keep that one. We'll put it back in the basement. Ursula K. Le Guin's Rakanan's World. I think I actually have the 3 books in this series in a collected edition on the TBR already, but we will keep this vintage copy in the basement. Here is The Chronicles of Amber, Volume 2 by Roger Zelazny. This one, do we have Volume 1? Oh, we do have Volume 1. Here's Volume 1. We might as well keep both of those in the basement. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Now, this is a cool vintage copy, but I think I actually have 2 copies of this already, so I think we can let this one go. Dashiell Hammett, Nightmare Town, which is stories. We will keep this, put it in the basement. Oh my god, this is funny because this Veronica Mars, the $1,000 tan line, is a Veronica Mars book that I borrowed from the library when I worked in the Brooklyn Public Library in Brooklyn, and I thought I had lost and I never gave back. Oh my god, my old license is in here. That's crazy. This one we're definitely keeping, partly because I stole it from the library. So I thought I had lost it and I had to repurchase the book for the library. We're going to keep that, but we'll put it back in the basement. Also had in there Tortilla Flat by John Steinbeck. This has a note of some variety in it. That's on an old beer menu. Interesting. We'll keep that in there. We will put this back in the basement as well. I love John Steinbeck, but I don't need every one of his books out on my TBR. The Second Trip by Robert Silsberg. This is a vintage sci-fi. It's about someone whose memory is destroyed and then they like re-input him. I don't think I'm super interested in that one. This Immortal by Robert Zelazny. 3 Days of Nuclear War. I don't think I'm interested in that one. Another Roger Zelazny, Mad Wand. This seems to be maybe a little bit more fantasy than sci-fi. Yeah, Sorcery. Not really interested in that one. Ursula K. Le Guin, The Compass Rose short stories. Oh man, this one's brutal. Brutally moldy. We'll keep that one. We gotta clean these. Short stories by Roger Zelazny. 15 stories. We'll keep that one, put it back in the basement. The Big Eye by Max Ehrlich. This is a great cover, but our basement does take on water sometimes, so maybe these all got water at some point. Earth will be completely destroyed. This is another beautiful cover, totally messed up by water damage. So sad. This is Child of Fortune by Norman Spinrad. Exhilarating, erotic, joyous, poignant, vivid realism of On the Road, mystical transcendence of Siddhartha. Well, that sounds exciting. I don't think we need to keep that one. And the very last book in this box is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. This one's really interesting because I don't remember ever having this or hauling this one. This is a really well-loved British author, and this is a book where the main character lives each day, or lives her life multiple times and dies multiple times. So maybe she's born and then dies of sickness as a baby. So the next time she comes back, she's born and she lives a bit longer and she gets hit by a car when she's a child, etc., etc. This is one that people love, but it's so long, and I've often thought about, do I want to read this book? And I don't want to read this book. It's too long and it's just not my kind of book, I don't think, because it's like a long, drawn out saga. That one is going to be unhauled. So from this collection, we have 3 books going on the TBR, 14, so these 4 plus 10 going back in the basement, plus a handful of literary magazines, 1 maybe that my husband has to look at, and 9 getting unhauled. So that was a good next 3 boxes of basement box books. This is definitely the most moldy and unfortunately water damaged collection of books that we've had so far, which is a real shame, but quite a few books going on the red shelves, quite a few books going on the TBR, not as many books getting unhauled as I would like. Many more books going back down into the basement. Let me know if you have boxes of books that you don't know what's in them. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here, if I should prioritize any of them. And thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!